the Nonprofit Podcast, powered by Donorbox.
Nonprofit fundraising is a rewarding but challenging endeavor, especially today. There's some new data out that says online revenue for the average nonprofit decreased in 2022, and the downturn seems to be continuing well into the second quarter of 2023. And there are many reasons for this, from conflicts to economics. Nonprofits faced a number of obstacles in the past few months. However, drilling down into the findings offers some insight into what is driving that drop-off. And don't worry, Jenna and I have done that drilling for you. Welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast. I'm Kara, fundraising coach at Donorbox. We're here each week with practical actions you can use today to increase donations and take your nonprofit to the next level tomorrow. I'm delighted to have Jenna Lynch, nonprofit advocate at Donorbox, here with me this week as we talk about some new data on online giving. Welcome, Jenna.
Hey, Kara, that's right. We've got some new data for our listeners today on online giving. We'll talk about what it means and how you can work to get ahead of some things now so you don't see a slump in online revenue this year. And these are really good practices to have in place no matter what's ahead.
Yeah, and they're really good practices to have in place for fundraising in general or that online fundraising. So let's get started. First of all, the M+R Benchmarks report is always really well done, and this is the data that we're referring to. And so M+R is an agency that works with nonprofits, and for the past several years, they've aggregated and broken down data from hundreds of nonprofits. They comb through literally billions of email and SMS messages from these nonprofits that they work with, plus millions of website visits and social media posts. Then they look for data nuggets and extrapolate them. Then they put it all together in a report. And with a snack in hand, I recently spent quite a bit of time reading their report and trying to decipher what all this means for the nonprofit sector in general. And one thing that stood out to me this year was that from these data, they found that online revenue for the average nonprofit decreased by 4% in 2022. And online giving was down for both Giving Tuesday and on December 31st in 2022. So we're going to jump in at the deep end and look at three of the most common and pressing challenges for online fundraising and suggest some best practice solutions that you can implement right away to help prevent this decline in online giving for your organization.
Thanks for breaking that down for us, Kara. I think this really sets the scene. So here are the three most common obstacles that we see around online giving. First, do donors understand their impact? Do they understand why it's important to support you? And then, is it easy to give? And then once they give, what will it take to earn their ongoing support? So let's start with the first obstacle. Do donors understand the impact that they make when they give to you? And you can really hinder your donor communication strategy by not presenting a clear message here. And this can result in inconsistency and an inability to engage your prospective donors and not conveying the mission effectively. You know, I see this more often than you would think. We have to remember our nonprofits have a unique mission, usually geared toward changing people's lives, easing suffering, and improving the environment. Whatever it is, it's the mission that makes donors feel connected to the cause, and it should be presented simply and clearly across all platforms. And very often, nonprofits are not able to convey the mission effectively, and this is a major messaging no-no. It essentially means that donors may not know what they're supporting or why they should contribute, and you have to be passionate, but you have to be simple and inspiring, but most of all, you have to be really clear and consistent. So this is a big challenge.
Yeah, it is. Sometimes we as nonprofits have so much to say and we want to push it all out there, but mixing messages really may confuse donors, leading to frustration and then a lack of support. So when you see this, Jenna, what are some ways you recommend nonprofits clear up that muddled messaging?
That's a great question, Kara. There are definitely some ways to clear up that muddled messaging. I love that, for sure. One really powerful approach is to use compelling images. Visual storytelling can speak volumes and create an emotional connection with your audience. And I say this all the time, as humans, we are visual creatures. When donors see impactful images that resonate with your cause, it helps them understand the essence of your mission and motivates them to support you. And another tip is to make sure that your donation page text is super clear. So keep it concise and focused on the most important information. You want to avoid overwhelming donors with an avalanche of text. So instead, provide them with just the key details they need to know about each donation and how it will make a difference. And this way, they can easily grasp the purpose and impact of their contributions. And don't forget to include a really compelling CTA on your donation page as well, right? Just remember the C3 formula here, make it clear, concise, and compelling.
Three C's.
And then
I love it.
I know, I love a formula here. So another good thing to do is tying specific dollar amounts to tangible actions or outcomes. This is a really great way to clear up any confusion. So $10 provides a backpack to a student. $100 provides a vet checkup for your dog. When you show donors exactly how their money will be used, the direct impact it will have, it makes giving more concrete and meaningful and tangible. People love to see their generosity in action.
Generosity in action is so compelling for your longtime donors, and it can really be a magnet that attracts new supporters. So that's really a great recommendation, Jenna. And that leads to nonprofits finding it challenging to engage new prospects. And prospects who are not already passionate about the cause might need a little extra convincing to donate. Nonprofits really have to showcase their successes and their impact using storytelling to show how they're making a difference. And some nonprofits may struggle, though, because they believe they don't have the necessary resources or skill set to attract those prospects who could be valuable supporters. And I would argue that they have all they need. They really just need to do it better and be more clear.
So how do we go about solving this other than ensuring our mission is a clear call to those like-minded people who will support our cause?
So nonprofits must make sure that their messaging is crystal clear on all channels. So I'd add another C to your 3C formula and make it the 4C formula, I guess, but consistency. And this means that ad campaigns, website content, personal communications should all be consistent with the organization's mission. Additionally, frequent and clear messaging should be used to boost donor retention and upgrade donations. I like to recommend to my coaching clients they consider organizing their messaging around campaigns. So that would be a sequence of communication touch points during a concentrated time that's all organized around one goal or one messaging theme over that period of time. And so it's not haphazard at all. It's very organized and very concentrated to a certain amount of time. And then nonprofits should make use of all of the many, many new and established available resources and technologies to reach new supporters and new prospects. And that means using some of the multiple platforms and media channels to engage donors. And then also think about using technology boosters like crowdfunding or peer-to-peer social media campaigns. These all help diversify fundraising strategies and gain more supporters, but sometimes it's hard to get the confidence to try something new that you're not used to.
I'm glad you said that, Kara. I think confidence is a good word there. And I do think some organizations can become set in their ways when it comes to communication and messaging, but also fundraising techniques, which is our next challenge or obstacle to online giving. So I have two thoughts here. First, making it easy for donors to give. And then second, trying some new techniques, having that confidence to try some new techniques. And a lot of organizations are not too keen to try something new when times are tough and dollars and donors are down. But sometimes you just have to put your shoulders back and walk forward. There are so many tools and techniques available these days to assist. So, Kara, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. What are some common pitfalls that nonprofits face when it comes to their fundraising strategies, and how can they overcome these to ensure their long-term success?
Well, I think one common issue is the over dependence on whatever has worked well in the past, whatever you're comfortable doing as the primary source of fundraising. So for instance, one time I did a direct mail campaign that had terrific results. Something really resonated, whether it arrived in mailboxes at the right time on the right day, or the talking points were spot on with the audience. Something knocked this mailing out of the park. So what did I do next time it was time to mail? Well, I pretty much did the exact same thing, but the results were a little different. It pretty much just tanked. But I think not in nonprofits, we all have a tendency to do this a bit. If we have a gala that's a shining success, we replicate it exactly as is every single year until it's bled every last bit of life out of it and no one looks forward to coming. I've seen some organizations have an urgent, and I'm using air quotes here, urgent campaign to raise money for a project or get signatures to advocate for a cause, and it's viral and oh so popular. So they replicate it a few months or a year later and it falls short. All I'm saying is that nonprofits should diversify their fundraising efforts by exploring technology and techniques from online to in-person, and then diversify their messaging. It's like the boy who cried wolf. If you have too many urgent messages, it could lead to donor fatigue and donors tuning you out altogether. So find what works for your donors and what works well for your team. You want whatever you do to be reasonable to plan and manage on your end.
Yes, yes, yes. The fundraising landscape is changing all the time, and donors are changing too. They're not staying the same. So, making it easy for your donors to contribute is really, really crucial. And honestly, I think it's never been easier to do this. There are so many platforms and technological advances to create a really smooth and user friendly giving experience. So for me, a donor portal is really the golden ticket here. By choosing a platform that has a well-designed and user-friendly donor portal, you double dip on the benefits. So one, donors manage and update their own information from checking personal details and giving history to setting up and overseeing their own recurring donations, which leads to benefit number two, a lighter admin load for your team as a result. So, like you said, it should be really reasonable for your team to manage on their side as well.
That's always a win. Yeah.
You bet. Yes. And one of the ways to use that time is to explore some pretty awesome fundraising techniques that empower your supporters. So I want to look at just three for a minute.
Yeah, let's do it.
Kara, you mentioned peer-to-peer, where your supporters create their own fundraising pages and share them across their networks. So this really deepens your reach and it expands your donor engagement for your mission. I love peer-to-peer. My ears perk up whenever I hear a mention of it. And that's a really great thing to explore. There's really great engagement within that. And then add all important in-person giving to the mix. You know, you said you should explore on-site and in-person. So on-site cashless giving options like Donorbox's live kiosk make it really easy for donors to contribute wherever they are and really seamless for your admin team to track and acknowledge. And then number three, do not forget the more traditional approaches, of course, like direct mail postcards that pack a pretty meaningful punch, and you can really amp up donor convenience just by adding a text to give option on that or a QR code to your messaging as well. So you're kind of creating this combination of online and offline strategies. And with this, you'll reach a wider audience and really diversify your fundraising efforts. But I will say this, the personal touch still matters. So from a call to express your heartfelt thanks to a follow-up chat, these personal interactions show your donors how much you value their support. And at the end of the day, it's all about finding what works best for your organization and your supporters. So a combination of all these is always really good.
It just makes sense. It makes sense that nonprofits should invest in a diversified fundraising strategy, and all of those will increase revenue potential and help retain existing supporters, setting the organization up for success in the long term.
For sure. And remember, fundraising doesn't have to be limited to events or sending out an email or whatever it is that you're most comfortable doing. So I really encourage our listeners to embrace technology and develop a personal connection with your donors to really maximize your impact there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so that takes us to our last obstacle. So you work really hard to get those donors. And now what's this next step in your relationship with them? So our third tip today to keep this dismal data away of the online giving being down this year is to do your very best to retain the donors you have. Do your utmost to encourage those one-time donors to consider investing in your organization as a monthly donor. And then make your organization so welcoming and engaging, they stay around and give year over year. That M+R data showed that although overall online giving revenue was down in 2022, there was one exception, and that was the revenue from monthly giving. And that had increased by 11% and accounted for almost a third of all online revenue. So monthly giving is really creeping up as a revenue booster. Plus, it costs less for any organization to keep those donors engaged and wanting to support the organization over and over again than it does to go out and find new donors.
You're right. Plus, those monthly donors provide predictable revenue that your organization can count on for forecasting and budgeting. That is so invaluable. We all want that. And repeat donors are also more likely to increase their next gift if you do a good job of making them feel connected to the work. And I think a lot of retention issues stem from low donor engagement. Donors may not feel connected to your organization or appreciated for their gifts. So you got to keep that in mind too.
Yeah, gaining your supporters' trust, it doesn't happen overnight, but it can and it will happen over time if you're committed to it. So if you think of your own personal inner circle, mine is made up of those I trust the most. It's made up of people who pursue me, who check in with me, people who give me grace when I need it. Trust and confidence are so instrumental in our closest relationships, and our organizations are really no different. Successful nonprofits consider their relationships with their supporters as an organizational asset. They invest in it, and when they do, it reaps dividends. So how do they do it though? So we did a whole episode of the Nonprofit Podcast just on this. So be sure to check out last week's episode to go a little deeper. But essentially, you communicate the value of your cause and the impact of your donors. Use stories and testimonials and data to show how donors can make a difference when they give. And then thank them often and sincerely and offer them opportunities to get involved with your organization in other ways.
Yes, retaining donors is something we recently covered in great detail. And looking at these new stats, it's a real growing issue. But yes, retention can be difficult if there's a lack of personalized communication, recognition, and follow-up for sure.
And that personalized communication and follow-up could mean more donors choose to support you over a longer period of time. And that results in more dollars for your organization and more sustainable, predictable revenue overall.
We've said it before, and I know we will say it again. Nonprofit fundraising can be challenging, but these challenges are not insurmountable. And with the right approach and tools, we can ensure that nonprofits get the resources they need to create a better world. And speaking of the right tools, of course, we have a free resource for you. In the show notes, we've linked an ebook on online giving that dives deeper into the strategies we discussed today. And it's packed with practical tips and insights to really help you navigate the world of fundraising. So be sure to check it out.
Thank you, Jenna, for sharing that and for sharing your expertise and insights on fundraising challenges and strategies. It is always a pleasure to have these discussions with you.
Thanks, Kara. And to everyone listening, remember, fundraising is not a one-size-fits-all endeavor. Each nonprofit is unique, and what works for one may not work for yours. So take the time to evaluate your organization's specific needs and goals, and don't be afraid to try new approaches.
As you log off today's podcast, think about that one new fundraising approach you've been wanting to try, or maybe a little fearful to try, and spend 30 minutes digging into it today. How can you put it into action for your nonprofit in the coming months? And as we close today's show, we want to simply say thank you for choosing to spend time with the Nonprofit Podcast. I hope you've left with the confidence to take a small step today that will make a big difference tomorrow. Be sure to click the download button on your podcast player, then leave the Nonprofit Podcast a review or give it a thumbs up if you're listening to the Nonprofit Podcast on YouTube. Your review is really a great way to help others find us. You're here to help others. We're here to help you. So until next time, stay inspired.
That warm feeling when you help someone, it's not just happiness, it's fulfillment. And we believe it should be available to everyone, from frontline heroes to first-time fundraisers. Our tools empower you to help others. This is our mission. This is Donorbox, helping you help others.